Before we dive in, can I tell you the sentence that I hear the most from smart, successful women? I know I should be investing. I just don't know where to start. If that's you, you are not behind. You've just never been taught. And that's exactly why I built the Invest Like a Woman workshop series. It's one live session. We'll cover how investing actually works, how to start with what you already have, and the exact first steps to take this month. You don't need to be rich to start. You need to start to get rich. Head to the link in the show notes and grab your spot.
Welcome to Fiery Femmes, the podcast where high-achieving women build wealth, redesign their careers, and create lives with real freedom. I'm Sheena, an accredited investor, former tech sales professional, and the founder of Fiery Femmes. After a decade across global SaaS, startups, and my own reinventions, I realized the most powerful thing a woman can have is optionality. So, in every episode, we explore the future of work, the psychology of wealth, and the practical strategies that help women build careers and lives that evolve as fast as they do.
Who is Lucy from Tap the Gap?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy Keogh, and I'm the founder of Tap the Gap, which is a tech company essentially helping women build wealth while they shop. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's so aligned and it's while they shop as well. So tell us about the mechanisms of that.
Yeah, great. So look, the way the product works is pretty simple, and there's three parts to it. So the first one is we connect to your bank, and every single time you use that connected bank account, we round up every purchase to the nearest dollar, $2, or $5. So that means you might go and buy a coffee for $4.50, and that 50 cents gets rounded up, and we sweep that money into your super. So that's on every single transaction. And that money is direct debited 3 times a week. So you hardly kind of feel it. It's like a dollar here or there. The second way that the app works is what's called brand bonus. And that's where we have over 275 brands on the platform. And when you shop with them, you get a gift from them into your super. So it's usually a percentage of the fee. So I might buy a shirt like this at the Iconic and I pay $100 for it. And 5% of that would come back and we sweep that money into your super. So you've got a combination of your own money on every single purchase and then a combination of money coming from the brands when you shop with them. And the last part of our product is education, because we've found that a little bit of education bit by bit really helps grow confidence for women in that world of financial literacy. And so, yeah, we deliver micro learning little bits at a time to help women feel more confident with their superannuation and their attitude towards investing.
Huge and amazing work. I know how much it takes to build in a regulated environment such as Tap the Gap in health tech, wealth tech. So well done. I can imagine
Thank you.
A few of the battle scars along the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's some stories, but, that's... Well, I have written a book before because I come from a writing background. So maybe there'll be another book in me after I get to the other side of this thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I can just imagine. And Lucy, before we get into the nitty-gritty of things, I would love to know what's something about you that is not listed on your LinkedIn profile?
Ooh, this is a good question, actually. I guess what's not there is you can see that I've worked in a world of advertising and then that I've built this kind of startup. But I guess what's not really described there in detail is my knowledge and growth around super, right? And how I went from this non-financial person to becoming an expert in superannuation. Like, it's sort of a bit weird, right? And look, we have it there, but really I don't explain to people that journey, which is I actually didn't know anything about super really until about 4 years ago. And it was working in the category when you're a creative in advertising and you have to sell something, you have to understand it intricately. And you have to understand it so well that you can communicate it to someone who doesn't know anything about it. So what people probably don't understand from my LinkedIn profile is that, yeah, I don't come from a wealth background. I've actually learnt all of this, and I've brought, I guess, my human lens to the experience. And yeah, everything I've learnt, I'm now putting into Tap the Gap. So I am a super guru, but that's self-taught, 10,000 hours, don't they say?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes when it's actually your personal story, your personal interests, and you apply all that muscle into like learning, it's so much more effective because you have that personal interest in it as well. So that's really incredible that you're now a superannuation guru. And can I ask what happened along the way when during your time at advertising that you were
Yeah.
like, wow, there's so much to learn. I want to share this with everyone else as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Great question, actually. Because I don't often think about that as much now, as we're building and moving forward all the time. I think when I first got approached to come back to the agency I was working at, I'd worked there earlier in my career. They're a fantastic place to work. They came back and said, look, we want you to lead this super account and we want you to do everything from brand right through to member comms. And that was kind of unusual for creative directors to work across the full gamut. And most people sort of looked and went, oh, super fun. It's like, that's a bit dull. And I looked at it really with, real interest. I'm like, well, if we can take a category that's really dull, the only way is up, right? And so there's a lot of room for improvement there. And I think people don't consider that sort of like a sexy thing, like they want to work on beer advertising or, supermarkets or something. But I think if you reframe it to be, well, what is the opportunity here? And that's like limitless. That's where I kind of dug in, right? And I took it on board as my own learning and self-discovery, rather than feeling like a job. So yeah, as I was going and talking to lots of people about this, it was probably just a real self-discovery for myself as well as working, if that makes sense. And I started to grow my confidence and I could see, well, what if everyone could do this, right? Like just little by little, because you don't understand everything about super and investing, you would know straight away. And if you try and get someone to even think that they can do that, they'll just be turned off. They'll be like, oh, it's a bit overwhelming. It's a bit too much. It feels too serious. So I think if I can align my journey of working for 3.5 years on not really knowing anything about it to where I am now, that's what I'm trying to emulate in Tap the Gap.
Absolutely. And it's incredible because, of course, when you run accounts and you don't really know anything about, or maybe you know bits and pieces, you want to make sure that like you're credible. So you've researched a lot about superannuation and just make sure that when you're talking to your account that you actually care. So you've cared so much and have done your due diligence, extra work, extra homework to make sure that you understand their industry as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point actually, because you have to understand both sides. Like you have to understand the industry and the challenges that the super companies face, right? Like they've got a huge responsibility in terms of legal compliance, all of the reporting they do. Then, the marketing team is only one part of that. Then you've got the product team and you've got the consumer. So I think my experience was actually I'm not sitting on one side. I could see all of it. And that's kind of unusual because normally you have someone, at a super fund, like they're really living in that world all the time and they probably don't have as much of an understanding as, as we might, as people far on the outside world. I mean, the marketers do, obviously. But yeah, it's really interesting to understand all those facets, right? Because it's not as simple as just doing an ad campaign. It's really understanding fundamentally where the industry sits. What are the challenges broadly with the industry? What's the history of the industry? Where's it going? And that's probably what really excited me by not only understanding just a kind of thing from a communications point of view, but from a business point of view, what is this institution and how is it built and what is kind of fundamentally wrong, like at that structural level. So yeah, that's a great question that you asked.
I think it's great that you're in an unusual space because I think that's where usually where the opportunities lie as well, the unusual gray space. And again, like kudos to I was talking to someone earlier today and I'm like, I question myself on like choosing this space because it's so regulated that I feel I need to be very careful with what I say, what
Yeah.
And also, like, I am not providing personal advice at all. I usually refer people who do have those very specific nitty-gritty to advisors that I know, that I've worked with,
Correct.
but absolutely no advice coming from my end. No
Yeah,
personal
same.
financial advice. Like,
Same
uh,
here. We're general. Yeah, we're general advice. But I think what's interesting about that, even as part of this journey, is, general advice. It is important. You need to understand the parameters of it, but literally translating what is factual advice into information that people can actually understand, that becomes classified as general advice. And I found that really fascinating to start with. I'm like, oh, so just so that I can explain super to someone so they can actually understand it, I need to have a license. And look, there's areas within that, right? Because I understand now better than I did when I started why I need that regulation because, these are really important things. This is someone's life savings that they're putting money into and that's really serious business. But I do find, I don't know, I just find there's great tension in the fact that, in order to help everyday people, yeah, I had to jump through so many hoops to get there. And ordinarily, I feel like that's the responsibility of our government, right? But no one is doing this job. We have the ATO and who enjoys reading the ATO website? Yes, it's informative, but do people understand it? No. And that's why we've got this massive gap and this chasm of lack of engagement because our systems and our infrastructure isn't there delivering on what I believe is the responsibility of the government, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So someone has to take on the responsibility, and this is you.
I don't,
It's
yeah,
great.
right now I'm like, yeah, maybe could have thought that through a little bit more, but yeah, it is. But I do have people saying that to me, like customers who say, isn't this the government's responsibility? And I said, well, yes, you might frame it like that. And, people in government have got a big job to do, right? Like a huge job. And that's not dissing them. I think politicians are amazing in what they can achieve. And, particularly our government right now have achieved great things for women in terms of equality. And there's huge changes happening in super as well. But I think there is this expectation that someone else is going to do that. And there's just such parameters around the bigger institutions, particularly the super funds. They can't move at speed and they've got all these other things to do, if that makes sense. So that's why if we're like, can we focus on that niche of just engaging people in super and helping them build their confidence, then we can be one part of a broader ecosystem, Like, I don't want to become a super fund. I don't want to take over that job from anyone. I'm like, you do you, but we're really focused on engaging more people in this, in this sector, which, yeah, needs to be treated as the sexy thing it is, which it's not right now.
Yes, I think the rebrand, or I guess a new category that's sexier for superannuation. Definitely, I'm all for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we've got an ad campaign coming out soon. So yeah, keep an eye on that, which will be great. That will sort of really, shift the category, I think.
Yeah, I'll keep my eyes peeled. I'm super excited for that. And
Yeah.
look, Lucy, obviously we are aligned on a lot of things, especially on economic power with women, financial
Yeah.
literacy for women. Yesterday, I had a call with a founder, and I told him about the stat of there's actually more women over 55 is the growing population for homelessness in Australia, and I think most in like the Western world as well. And he was so surprised, and I was just like, I thought this is like a fact that everyone knows, but it's not. So I guess one of the things that I'd love to talk to you about is
Yeah.
around like economic power and about how women usually have the budget,
Yeah.
but for some reason along the way, there's some mishaps that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so strange, right? It's a similar story, I think, to, you see girls ahead of the class, in school, and yet, they graduate and they don't take the jobs sort of in the workforce, even though they've been those high achievers. So what I'd probably say is there's a real disparity in the way that women engage in our economy overall, right? Because if you look at things, ultimately, women make 80% of the purchase decisions. Now, that's in a household. It's 86% in the United States. That is a huge amount of economic power, right? But we see women are ending their lives having done all that purchase power and they're becoming homeless and they're retiring with less. So it's a really interesting, just crux we find ourselves in to say, well, actually, you can get annoyed about it, the fact that women are retiring with less and we don't get paid as much and all of this, but we have a huge economic power sitting right at our doorstep, and we're not making the most of it. And that's where Tap the Gap comes in, because by actually allowing women to continue to make those decisions, but every time they do put money in their future wealth, we're kind of hacking this system, right? And a lot of people haven't thought about that. There's definitely a lot of narrative around the wealth gap, the super gap in particular, and it's all about a deficit. But I think that we don't look at the optimism story, right? Which is what we can do. Like, where is our power? We need to stand in our power and go, hey, cool, I'm making that decision. I'm deciding really which car we buy. I'm, deciding on insurance. I know which supermarket we're going to shop at. Like, this is powerful stuff. And I think women for themselves need to reframe that and go, yeah, cool, I'm going to use this to my advantage rather than just being taken along and spat out towards the end of the system,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remembered some of my friends went to Japan and they were so surprised because they the waiters give the bill to the woman. So
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's
the,
so cool.
have you been to Japan?
I have, but I've only spent a few days over there as a stopover, and that's not something I picked up.
So
Wow.
they were a couple, and then they were like, one thing that really surprised me was usually here in Australia, it would be the husband, like they give the bill to the husband or to the man. But in Japan, they give the bill to the woman because they know that it's the woman who controls the funds. Like they do the budget. And I was like, that's so interesting.
I love this. There is a social post in this. I can see that. And that's really fascinating. And I think what's so interesting about that is, and it's something I spoke about at Vogue Codes recently, is that one of the questions Charlie asked me was about, women and shopping and retail has always been kind of deemed as quite frivolous. And, women are like, we're having retail therapy and, we've been made to feel guilty about purchasing things and about buying things, right? And I just love that we can flip that and say, stop feeling guilty, start feeling powerful, because
Yeah.
that's what you can do, right? Like, that is where your power is. And so we don't have to fit around a system. We're creating a new one around the way that we already live.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I also saw this post of why are women like getting positioned as like frivolous for like our nails, for the lipstick, for the croissants, like the little treat, when I know every maybe I don't watch sports as much, but
Okay.
some of my friends, my guy friends and husband does, they put like I don't know, maybe $50, $100 on like a game. I don't know what they bet on, but I'm like,
Yeah.
how come that doesn't get talked about? And also like on Wall Street Bets, which is like a Reddit subreddit.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Wall Street Bets?
No, I'm writing this down. Yeah.
So
Go.
basically, Wall Street Bets is a subreddit where like people, predominantly guys or men, would gamble their money on specific stocks.
Stocks. Yeah.
Stocks, they'll put call options, put up they'll do calls and puts on certain stocks, betting whether they're going to fail or they're going to succeed at a price. But they'll put losses. They'll post their losses of like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
My God.
Like, and it's wild because they kind of like make fun of each other. But I'm just like, yeah. So
And why
again,
is
like,
that not talked about, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Exactly.
yeah,
Whereas like women are like, like getting making fun of like the girl math thing, the little treat thing. Whereas like some people are literally making losses and posting about that on the internet just for the fun of it, it seems.
yeah. And you know what? Like, there's so much data that supports the way that women see future wealth creation as well. Like, so lots of studies, I mean, with the great wealth transfer, women are going to inherit a higher proportion of the money that's moving from the boomer generation. And they actually plan differently when it comes to wealth. They're thinking about longevity and their family and, what they're actually going to leave their kids. And, they have more of a generational lens. They also think about impact and where that money is going to be spent, what kind of companies. So there's a real shift in women should really, the biggest thing I want women to know now is this is your time, right? Like this actually is your time to stand in that economic power that you have, because don't let it kind of wash over you or feel that you're not, strong enough or knowledgeable enough. You've got it. Like it's right there in front of you, and you can make these decisions just by building a little bit of confidence, and starting to take small actions. It's fascinating to see even some of our early users who started, maybe 5 months ago, the actions that they're taking for themselves. Like we had a gorgeous user, Sam, who, quoted the fact that her dad taught her brother about finance when they were growing up, but not her, right?
Why?
And I don't think it was intentional, like, do you know what I mean? Like intentionally, I'm going to lock you out of this conversation. It was just something that naturally happened. This is the patriarchy at work. And so here she is later in life going, hey, I kind of missed out on all of this and I want to make up for it. And, we could see that, in month 4 of her Tap the Gap journey, she did actually change her investment choice in her super, and she named a beneficiary. And, like these are 2 actions for her wealth building, which are huge. Like super funds would love that to happen, for their customers. And they might send 10 emails and get no responses. So I think you can see that it is just taking that moment to realize you can empower yourself, right? And it doesn't need to be all at once. It's just a couple of little things, and that actually sets you up, for greater things that you want to do. And that's really that behavioural lens, I guess, that we're putting on the product. And so, yes, it's a fintech, but it's not actually just a set of features. It's the way that we're engaging and timing these responses to our users in order to sort of grow that confidence, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's how do we weave this experience of building wealth into everyday stuff and everyday habits and everyday actions, rather than going, oh, it's something for the future. I'll think about that later. And then that later becomes too late.
Definitely. And you're touching on the important and beneficial thing about time as well.
Yes.
So if people knew more that like if only, right, like when I was like in my early 20s that I kind of knew what
If
I know
only.
now, right? Amazing. Even if it was like maybe like $5 a week or something, like the impact of that would be massive.
Yeah. Like even just this idea of compound interest, right, is not something we're really taught. And I think it's part of one module in year 10 maths, and then superannuation is part of extension maths in year 12, which again, to me, surprises me because everyone will have a job at some
Yeah.
stage unless you're a trust fund baby. So, these are fundamental skills that our kids in Australia are missing out on, right? And if they know that, then yeah, they're already ahead of it. In your point that you make, like in your 20s, putting $5 a week away is going to be better for you than putting in masses more money later down the track. Yeah, it's great to see that, we've got young women using Tap the Gap and actually coming and talking to us, and they're really interested in this stuff because they know that they don't have everything that their grandparents had or even their parents had. Like the opportunities for them to build wealth are different now. And, property might feel out of reach, and, that the control that they have is not exactly where they want to be. So I do find that really powerful for people to understand these early messages, right?
So good. I read an article, I think was it this morning, that says that Gen Z is actually out earning millennial women at the same age.
Oh
So, and I
gosh.
think it's because Gen
Is that a
Z,
combination, like through earnings? Is that wages alone or just earnings based on investments and wages?
I feel like it might be earnings because I know that Gen Z focused on investing in stocks
Yep,
versus like property. And
correct.
to be fair, like with millennials, there was like the global financial crisis by the time that millennials like graduated. There's like
Yes.
just a few financial crises, but also Gen Z really studied and made sure that they were aware about like the financial complexities early on. I think
Yeah.
that's really they invested in their education basically.
Yes. Yeah. And I would agree. And I think, I'm seeing as well parents, wanting to get their children into Tap the Gap and do you know what I mean? Or into that early, because it is that that hindsight that we have later in life, right? To go, I want you to have more than what I've had. And actually, the more is the education that we didn't have. Like every generation wants the next one to be better off. But I think the theme that I'm seeing through that is they want that, these women now want the next generation to be better off from an education point of view because they know the challenges that they had, in their life, which is really encouraging, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
But the other thing that I've really noticed and I'd love to sort of touch on is, I guess, that behavioural lens, which is, the idea of wealth building has always coming back to that sort of frivolous thing. It's always been framed as something about willpower, right? You've got to be really strong, to not spend money or to spend money, and you've got to have these strict, budgets, and, like no one really wants to budget. Like it's not an exciting thing to do. We want the end result, which is we want to feel financially free and we want to feel strong and confident that our money's doing what it should do. But then we kind of get locked in this, I've got to act, I've got to learn more, I've got to do more. And that's where we're coming unstuck, right? Because the whole world for women right now is about adding more stuff to all the things that they are expected to do. And so that's where we've taken this twist with Tap the Gap, which is really about saying, well, you don't need to do that. You don't need to budget harder. This is something that is automated, right? You're doing it anyway. So it's kind of a set and forget in some aspects. You take 5 minutes to sign up and like connect everything up, and then you just go and live your life, right? So we're not trying to build a new behavior or build another thing. We're kind of taking this default angle, which actually I think is the power in it, right? I mean, there was a really interesting example over in Austria and Germany, which was about organ donation. Now, what they found was that essentially in Austria, you automatically became an organ donor unless you ticked a box to say you wanted to opt out, right? But in Germany, you had to tick a box to say, I want to opt in. Now, Austria's registration rate was 99%, right? Because you had to actively say, no, I'm really against this. But in Germany, you really had to, make that decision then and there. And that was a hard decision for people to make. So they had lower uptake. So I just find it really interesting to go, if we rely sheerly on willpower in that moment, we're not always going to achieve what we want to achieve, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you come to women at every single time and stage and go, I need you to think about this decision, I need you to think about this wealth building thing, they're just not going to get there in the end.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, we have so many things to think about also. Like,
Nuts, right? The mental
huge.
load is really crazy. And that is predominantly what we hear from our customers. And, people make great efforts. I've heard stories of people consolidating their super and trying to get, and that means kind of taking, I've got multiple funds and I want to put them in one. And for the listeners, that's a good idea because you only want to pay one set of fees, right? So, I've heard stories of people doing all of that and then they've got to the end of it and one super fund's in their maiden name, not their married name. And then they hit a block and they're like, oh, gosh, and then they stop. Now, a lot of that, ultimately, if you know what you're doing, the super fund you're moving to will help you with that process. And it's not as complex as you might think, but it's what you think at the time. And a lot of people think that engaging with their super is really complex, right? But it's not as much of it is. So that's where I just think this whole thing about behavior and the way that, we have to reframe that and kind of lean into these default behaviors. That's where the power is for women. So stop doing so much and do a bit less and, be potentially better off, as we say in the financial circles. You could be better off.
Yeah.
We can't guarantee. Yeah.
Definitely. I think with the behavior as well, I love how Tap the Gap is embedded into the everyday thing that we do anyway, which is like tapping your card. Like you're already purchasing. It's not something besides, I guess, like signing up and syncing all the accounts. It's not something that you have to do like all the time, like log something every purchase. And to your point about like budgeting, I think it's like there's only so much that you can budget. It's like your income is like, yeah, you can budget the disposable income that you have.
Yeah.
but there's a limit to it. I don't really like, besides all the budgeting that you can do, I'm a big fan of like try to create more income and create more
Yes.
revenue streams than just like how many coffees can I have this week? It's really there's so
Yeah.
much that you can do.
You're right. Well, that's the optimism angle that you're taking, right? Rather than the deficit, which is what can I cut out in order to get ahead, or what can I enhance, to get ahead? And so, yeah, we're leaning into that optimism, which is you do have power right now. And it doesn't matter if you're 25 or 55. One of the things that I want a 55-year-old woman to know is that, yes, you are closer to retirement, but the money that you have in your super keeps on investing past that date, right? So it invests for the next 20 years as you draw down your pension salary on it. And a lot of people don't know that because you know what? Like, no shame. It wasn't explained. I didn't know that 3.5 years ago. I thought you just got a lump sum and rode off into the sunset in a Winnebago, that you just took it all out and you bought one thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't help the fact that you've got a government pension and a super pension. Like, they've both got the same name, but they're different things. So yeah, like this system is fraught with unnecessary complexity,
A
I
hundred
think,
percent.
and
Yeah.
kind of setting us up to fail. But yeah, and that's the reason we exist, right? To do that. So I think, yeah, whatever stage you're at, there's potential in now. And even if you are putting in $20 a week, or like, our users at the moment are putting in around $40 to $44 a month, which is sort of around $10 a week. It doesn't sound like much, but that can be an extra 35 to 40K, over 30 years, right? Which isn't nothing, you know?
It's huge.
And that's just that money alone. If you add that to what you've already got in your super and it's compounding and growing, then that number could be even greater. Yeah. So I think if we can say to people today, it's not about like trying harder. It's just about being a little bit smarter.
Absolutely.
And this is what we're trying to do, is make it a smarter option, for women. And I can see, we have men on the platform as well, non-binary individuals. Like, Tap the Gap is for everyone. And we've even seen, we've got men on the platform who are putting money in their spouse's super, which is fantastic, right? And this is a community issue, which really, if we look at it, it's not just about women having less. It's actually about Australia, like
Yeah.
underestimating the economic impact that women have on our economy, right? And that's like a really big, chunky kind of topic. But
Yeah.
I think, it's really important that we look at that because, women aren't earning as much. They live longer, we're classy birds. We stay alive.
We do.
We're
We do.
healthy. Yeah. And I look at that and I go, look, there's a lot to be done a lot to be gained, should I say, from women's involvement in the economy and also making women stronger economically.
Yeah.
We know there's trillions of dollars every week that we're losing from the economy. Deloitte and IRS did a fantastic report, the big lift, which was talking about our capability as a nation and our financial capability, should I say. And, we're leaving a lot on the table. It's kind of the system itself that's failing us,
Yeah.
So it's not women's fault, but not only are we kind of ending up on the streets ourselves from an individual point of view when we retire, but we can't take part in the economy. And we'll be draining the economy, right? So there's all of this stuff that the government and Australia seeks to gain by helping women participate more in the economy and growing their own wealth. Everything from, being able to afford the insurance you need later in life to, actually moving more money and spending more money in the economy later in life.
Yeah.
There's just a real gamut of things because, yeah, if we look at some of those things from an insurance point of view, I mean, that's a whole other category where women weren't really considered from a structural infrastructure point of view. Again, it's a financial system that wasn't really designed to reflect the way women work and live. Like, if you get an insurance policy right now as a woman, you're kind of considered a risk, right?
Really? I actually didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, you have time off work, if you're going to rear children, like that's a risk. You might, there's a chance you'll die in childbirth. Like, these are very small percentages, but these are all parts of a female's life story that don't factor in like to a male story, right?
Yeah.
And women are living very differently than they lived, years ago, right? It's all of these things. I think if you look at it, like my story, part of Tap the Gap comes from, my mum separated from my dad. She was a primary school teacher. She brought up 4 kids by herself and she didn't have any super when she retired, right?
Oh my God,
Like now
what?
that's the system letting her down, right? And letting down all of these carers, these amazing, people who don't get paid right at the, higher tier, the nurses, the teachers, that care economy.
Mm,
And I know there's huge discussion around that and talking about care credits and how can we actually value that contribution to the economy. But I think if we look back at it, mum contributed, she was really productive, right? Like she was
yeah.
a productive individual. She taught kids, future taxpayers. She brought up 4 kids and we're all doing reasonably okay. So if you look at her from a productivity point of view, she's a highly productive member of society. And yet that's not being reflected. And so I think, we know that productivity in our nation and innovation has slowed, right? Like our productivity is at like 1%.
Yeah.
If we take a step back and go, well, women have so much to offer, so much, let's get them engaged in the economy more and look at that productivity behind it, like what we could actually achieve. So yeah, I mean, I think there was an article this week that really University of New South Wales talked about just what we're missing with this innovation gap, right? And that was a lot to do with funding women and female founders, like in tech,
Yeah.
which is obviously a huge topic, but it really does have that connective tissue, right? Because it's not just about funding women businesses. It's actually about, what that means for the economy greater. Like we've got all this innovation power and we're missing out on half of it because we're not letting that go forward. I don't know what you think of that.
I think because obviously where I sit on is like on the investor side, and
Yeah.
I also do I also do workshops every month called Invest Like a Woman, and it's
Yep.
really like very basic foundational investment lens because
Yep.
to your point earlier, investing, thinking about your wealth, it's a muscle. You have to really have runs on the board. You have to have the
Yes.
breadth of experience. We can't make big decisions without making small decisions first. So
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes.
so you have to make like those reps and like yes, there will be some losses along the way. That's part of life. That's normal. But where am I going with this? But basically, it's you we have to make more discussions about this and have more safe spaces so that women can feel confident to invest, make and take into account that like yes, investing has a risk and actually we
Yeah.
need to think about the risk management. If you own a business, do you then invest in risky assets? No, because you're already living a risky lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Point in case here. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I guess what I'm trying to say is that we need to have like these rooms, more and more of like women to come into these rooms. And you and I are, I would like to say, educated about like investing, and we have more to learn as well. But sometimes when I lead those workshops, it reminds me of this is important. We should do more of this because
Yeah.
there are certain people, especially people in healthcare, who they provide so much value, but because again, like their brain cells are so consumed with like health, the science around health and providing care so that people live,
Yes. A
they
reasonably important job, I'd say.
a very
Yeah.
important job, but also then what's left to learn about their finances? They're exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So of
Yeah.
course you have to like make room for that. And yeah, we need to have more of these conversations and create more rooms to kind of okay, people can talk about investing and this and that, but how do you actually move from no investing to actually investing those funds?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I love what you said. I'm stealing the Japan thing as well and the Japan, like the bill to the lady and the small decisions allow you to make the big one, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's true of anything in life that you don't build confidence in really big chunky moments. Like you build them in kind of tiny pieces and then all of a sudden you're standing in that confidence and you don't kind of realize how you got there. But
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to do with women and money and investing in particular. And that's why we look at, Tap the Gap and how we're talking to women about super, which is actually teaching them about investing, right? And who knows where our product will be in the future as to what we offer. But when you understand super, you do understand investment because, that's fundamentally what it is. Everyone is an investor. Every
Yeah.
woman is an investor. Like if you're listening to this call and you have a job or you've ever had a job, you're an investor. You might just be a sleepy one. So it's helping people wake up to that realization that this is their money. You're in control. And yeah, treat it like a necessary thing. Like treat it like your health and well-being, like your exercise, as you put it, to learn and practice a little bit more. And then things become easier and they become habits, which is, really what we want people to think about, in terms of, moving from that world, like that chasm that you described is we're going from sort of everyday banking to sophisticated investor. And it feels like there's nothing in between. And it feels like I could never do that running jump across the massive ditch, from, hey, I've got a mortgage and a savings account and, that's kind of it, to oh my goodness, I understand the markets and I've got crypto and all sorts of different types of investments. We do need stuff to meet people in the middle and
Yeah.
hold their hand across that massive gap. And that's where I see the great opportunity, for things that you're doing yourself and things that Tap the Gap can do. And working together, right, with women and with community institutions. Like it's just been so lovely. I've had lots of people reach out lately saying, hey, like the people in my community would be really interested in this. Let's work together. And I kind of love that, right? Like I love that collaboration is the heart of what can drive change in this space, as opposed to, I don't know, just expecting people to kind of work it out for themselves, right? And I think that's what women are fantastic at. We're really good collaborators at heart. So women in business, we stick together and we're all here to pull each other up the ladder, which is what I'm finding. I think that sentiment, yes, we can talk about the doom and gloom of the 2%, which,
Yeah.
is tragic, but I know that that's changing. And I know that there's a shift there and I can feel it with the people around me. And even the way that I see the ecosystem now, even after 18 months of being in it, like I will try and help anyone who needs help, and I will give them my time when I can, because I know what it's like to be, further back in the journey. And you need that help because you need people to encourage you because the odds are stacked against you. So yeah, I think we're at a stage where things are, moving in the right direction, both for women in technology to build these businesses and also for women in investing to really understand not just the basics, but to move forward in their progression.
Huge, 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 huge. And I know, like, as we're about to wrap things up, and I want to implore all the women who are listening to this as well to, like, have your feet into investing, have your feet into tech. Would love to know from your side, Lucy. You've worked in advertising, you've
Yeah.
launched a book, you've produced a book, and now producing fintech company software. What would you advise to 20-year-olds today?
20-year-olds. Okay. So two things, just enjoy being young and optimistic, which I love. I'm a forever optimist, but do stay optimistic. And I know there's lots of challenges out there for you thinking the world ahead is really uncertain, but you have power in your optimism, right? You can shape the world any way you want. In terms of your finances, and particularly when it comes to super, if you're in your 20s, just stop what you're doing and look at your super app right now and see what you've got in there. And don't panic or don't think that, oh, I'll do this later. Start now. Start today. Even if it's $5 a week that you want to put in, just know that time is on your side. And, whether you think I'm this older woman trying to give you this sage advice or whatever, take it as you will. But honestly, you will thank me. You'll be telling people about this later on. So know that if your 20 time is on your side and the choices you make now will set up the choices that you're able to make later in life, because financial independence creates choice. And that's all I want for the women of Australia and around the world, is to have choice.
There you go. All the options that you have. And that's really the goal of investing as well. Yes, it
Yeah.
can make you a billionaire, millionaire, but also it gives you choice and option.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you deserve. That's what all women deserve, because we all work hard, whether you're working at home, looking after children, caring for someone, or working in the workplace and being paid wages. We all work hard throughout our lifetimes, and we always care for other people, often ahead of ourselves. So, yeah, getting your financial independence and making sure that you build that for yourself creates choice. And that's everything from leaving a job, leaving, walking away from a bad relationship, traveling, or starting a business. When you have that great foundation, you can do whatever you want, and you'll probably do something awesome, right? And we need more of that.
Well, thanks, Lucy, for being on the pod. I'm so excited to get this released and people
Thank
know more
you.
about Tap the Gap.
Yeah, yeah. So look, if Tap the Gap is of interest to you, you can jump on our website. We've got a web app right now, and we're pending release in App Store and Google Play. So that's coming in the next, couple of weeks, hopefully. Just like get your skates on over there at Apple. And yeah, we've got a 14-day free trial. So sign up, connect your bank. Try and do it all in one go, because we know what life's like. Just take 5 minutes, get it set up, and then away you go. And yeah, love to hear from you. Reach out via our website. Yeah, and follow us on tap.thegap on Instagram.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Fiery Femmes. If this resonated, share it with a woman in your life, because we rise higher when we rise together. Don't forget to follow and review. It helps more women access the tools and conversations that build wealth and confidence. For more career and financial empowerment, come hang out on Instagram and YouTube at Fiery Femmes. I'll see you in the next episode. RSU, options, ESPP, ESOP, ISOP. What do they even mean? When I was working in tech, no one could really explain in simple terms what my tax implications were from the equity in my compensation. There were times that I had to explain to the accountants what I mean. It took about 3 tax returns to find an accountant who knew what I was talking about. This is why I created equitytax.ai, an easy to use AI powered app to help you calculate tax payable based on your equity. Try it out today at equitytax.ai.